So they say that Torah mirrors real life, or real life can be seen within so many dynamics and relationships and conflicts in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. The Bible is not a book of only perfect people, of kind encounters and miraculous healing. It also acts as a caution to human nature. Commenting on Parshat Pinchas in the book of Numbers, Sefer Bamidbar, Rabbi Bradley Shavit Artson teaches this. He says, Jewish tradition offers small comfort to those in search of only sweetness and elevation from religion. Unlike other religious traditions that emphasize only the positive or that seek to uplift by focusing only on the sublime and the beautiful, Judaism has always adhered to the reality principle. Religion must illumine life as it actually happens, not some saccharine edited version that would be useless in times of trouble. Well, he wrote that in 2011, and I am sure Rabbi Artson could not have imagined the troubled times we are feeling now. Continued and active conflict, war, hatred, violence against Jews. He wrote that 15 years ago, and troubled times we are in indeed. 15 years ago doesn't feel that long ago to me, and yet it is over a lifetime ago for our bat mitzvah. Time is about perspective. So let's broaden the aperture a bit to learn across time. It is March 14, the 25th of Adar, and we are between Purim and Passover right now. The sanctuary was full on Megillah Madness, and we told the story of Queen Esther and Mordecai and Haman. Excellent, very good. The undeclared war with Iran had just begun and continues now. And on the near horizon is Passover. The first Seder is the night of April 1st. There's still space for the congregational Seder on the second night. If you want to join Sarah and me, just call the office during the week. And I am reading both the stories of Purim and Passover differently this year. It is the amazing part of reading and rereading the same stories over and over again, because while the stories are the same, I am different each time. The circumstances in which we encounter the stories change. These stories include cautions about governments which stoke fear, scapegoating minorities, and manipulation of official powers to subdue its own people. That is the story of Purim and of Passover. These are the stories of governments mobilizing to ostracize its own people and ultimately to kill them. In Purim, it is Haman who manipulates the king to seed fear of the Jews of Shushan, cautions that they are dangerous to the king, and ultimately uses the levers of power to have a declaration made for the destruction of the Jews. That's the story of Purim. The kingdom is mobilized for evil. And in the Passover story, a new Pharaoh spreads fear of the Israelites and incrementally ramps up the pressure on the Israelites to oppress them. First, more and more work, then employing Shifra and Puah, the midwives, and ultimately declaring infanticide of Israelite boys. In this moment, I am taken by how these stories, which are so familiar to us, can be seen as the story of governments mobilizing against its own people. They are the story of governments who lost their way and turned on their own people, first by othering a subgroup of its population, and then utilizing the power of government against themselves. Let's look more closely and see what we can learn from these stories. As Rabbi Artson teaches, Religion must illumine life as it actually happens, not some saccharine edited version that would be useless in times of trouble. Let's see how our stories can be useful at this time. In the book of Esther, chapter 3, it says, Haman then said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the other peoples in all the provinces of your realm, whose laws are different from those of any other people, and who do not obey the king's laws, and it is not your majesty's interest to tolerate them. If it please your majesty, let an edict be drawn for their destruction, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the stewards for deposit in the royal treasury, the book of Esther says. So what do we see here? Haman sowing fear in the king, othering the Jews of the kingdom, saying that they do not respect the laws of the land. They are criminals. They do not respect the kingdom. And then at the time that Shushan did not have emolument rules, Haman offers to give the king 10,000 talents of silver for the edict against the Jews. That's Purim. And Passover, in the book of Exodus, it says, a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us deal shrewdly with them so that they may not increase. Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. So they set taskmasters over them. For Pharaoh, he declares that the Israelites are too numerous. They are a danger. We must stop them because they are an enemy from within. Thus, armed government taskmasters were sent to control them. As the Mark Twain adage says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And so each holiday has its own heroes, Mordecai and Queen Esther, as well as Moses. Each holiday celebrates overcoming the plot and oppression of the Israelites, the Jews, by its respective government. And each holiday, each story focuses on the people of their time, recognizing their own agency in stopping the insidious acts of Haman and Pharaoh. This is how I am seeing these familiar stories in new ways this year. Esther and Moses are not just the hero to save the Jews. They are the embodiment of people pushing against a government who has lost their way, overstretching its power, and turned on its own people. In Shushan and in Egypt, they used legal authority to suppress and attempt to kill the Jews of that time. And I imagine if we were to know of those kingdoms, we would see Pharaoh or Haman had just not come only after the Jews, but our stories only focus on our story. So Mordecai helps Esther to reclaim her agency when he speaks to her. He says, Mordecai to Esther, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, and while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a crisis. Maybe you have become the queen in Shushan so that you can act on behalf of others. In Exodus, God insists that Moses not wait for a miracle, but God teaches Moses to be an agent of change. Exodus 14, God says, then God said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward as they are at the sea in front of them and with Pharaoh's army rushing behind. But we tell ourselves that we are not Esther or Moses. We are not a superhero of the Tanakh. And while this is true, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks writes in his book, To Heal a Fractured World, The Ethics of Responsibility, he says, I remain in awe at the challenge God has set us to be different, iconoclasts of the politically correct, to be God's question mark, against the conventional wisdom of the age, to build, to change, to mend the world, Sachs says, until it becomes a place worthy of the divine presence, because we have learned to honor the image of God that is humankind. Biblical faith demands courage, Sachs writes. It is not for the faint-hearted. Its vision is of the universe. The vision of the universe is anything but comfortable. However free or affluent we are, he says, on Passover we eat the bread of affliction and taste the bitter herb of slavery. He continues, to imitate God is to be alert to the poverty and the suffering and the loneliness of others. And responding to Marx's charge that religion is an opium of the masses, Sachs concludes, opium desensitizes us to pain. The Bible sensitizes us to it. At times like this, it is not a moment to despair, but to reclaim our sense of agency. It is a time for us to find courage to act for others. It is easier to act as if nothing has changed in our immediate lives. I do not walk around with my passport to prove my citizenship, but I know people who do. I do not fear going to the grocery store or to my child's school, though there are many who do. If we retreat into our cocoons, we will feel safe, but we will not be any safer. In the book, How We Learn to Be Brave by Marianne Edgar Bude, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, she writes, we all want to be brave when it counts, to be the one who steps up and leans in and do the right thing when it matters most. We want to bring our best selves when we're called upon, to speak with clarity and conviction in a pivotal situation. She continues, moments like these are preceded by seasons of preparation and of practice and intention, of making countless daily decisions that determine our capacity to be brave when called upon and when we're summoned not of our own choices. She's right. Big moments are built upon all of the small moments which precede it. We train ourselves for larger acts of chesed and gevura, compassion and courage, by showing up for each other in the small ways so that we're prepared for the bigger ways. We are not expected to be Esther or Moses, but we are also not to be helpless or hopeless in the time we live in. We can act with kindness to others. We can stretch ourselves to support others, or check in with others, or build bridges to others who are feeling fearful at this time. We have a new sign in front of the synagogue, and it is a message we all need to hear and we need to embody. It says, proud to be Jewish, Am Yisrael Chai. And thousands of people will pass by the synagogue every day as they move up and down Old Georgetown Road, and they will see that we are not wilting or cowering. We are proud to be Jewish because we have a tradition of bravery, even as our heroes model for us that it might come hesitantly or with caution, even with trepidation. We are proud to be Jewish because we do not recoil from expecting better from ourselves or our community or our government. We are proud to be Jewish because I know I do not stand in this moment alone. I stand on the shoulders of Jews who experienced darker times than me, and they acted. And I stand here drawing on the wisdom of Jewish tradition, which guides me to act and to care and to love my fellow Jews and to love my neighbors. Purim and Passover are holidays of transformative action. That is why they're such important holidays. They mirror real life, including our ability to respond to dangers when governments act from people's lowest moral impulses. Esther acted, as did Moses. I believe their actions may be useful models for us in our times of trouble. And so as we sit between Purim and Passover now, May we find the courage to act as our forebears did, and may that be enough against the Pharaohs and the Hamans of our time. Shabbat Shalom.